Hi everyone, welcome to another edition of the Nigerian Man's Perspective. I have a special guest with me, Mr. Ade.
How
Ade,
are
how
you,
you
sir?
doing?
How are you, sir? I don't know about being special, but as you can say, another Nigerian man's perspective, because as you can see, as your viewers can probably guess, we're both Nigerian. So I
Absolutely,
appreciate the channel.
absolutely.
Just so you know, I've watched quite a number of your videos. I appreciate that. And I'm glad to have the opportunity to join you on this channel. So
Thank you,
glad to
thank
be
you,
here.
thank you for gracing the occasion. And we've had many conversations, but I think this is our first online
Yes, sir.
conversation. So, viewers, you're in for a treat. This man has a lot of wisdom, and I love hearing him and love speaking to him. So, Mr. Adi, or do I call you
Yes, sir.
Adi? Let me call you Adi. So,
Just call
Adi,
me Adi.
did you hear about this news about this 13-year-old Nigerian boy in the UK who sued his parents? So I'll just bring it up so the viewers can see exactly what I'm talking about. So
Yeah.
guys, the 13-year-old boy sues UK parents for deportation to Africa over gang involvement. I'll just read a little bit and then I'll just get Adi's view on this. A 13-year-old boy has taken legal action against his parents, accusing him of brutally taking him overseas meaning Nigeria, to be clear, and enrolling him in a boarding school before abandoning him there. Big words. The boy, whose identity is protected, contacted the British consulate and a child welfare organization after his parents registered him at an African school before returning to the United Kingdom. Before I just quickly go on, I'll put the link down in the description, viewers, so that you can read and get abreast of this story. But Adi, what's your take on this so far?
Wow, this is one of those things where you can either be on the fence about it or you can take a stance on one side. What I'm trying to say is that you can look at it from two different sides. I look at it from the side of, the kid. This is a child who's probably lived in the UK for his entirety of his life. What you're talking
Correct.
about now saying or wanting to do is take him out of the environment he's comfortable in, he's thrived in, good or bad, whatever it is he's been in, and take him to an environment where he has no control of whatever is going to happen. He has no idea, probably doesn't have any relations or relatives or anything. It's probably, the question would be, how long has he lived in Nigeria in the first place? How often does he go back to Nigeria? Has he even had any interactions with anybody in Nigeria to make him feel comfortable in that environment? That in it of itself is bordering on child endangerment right there, because what's the difference between taking that child and dumping him in a war-torn zone? The child has no concept. I don't know the entire story. I mean, I'm just reacting to what it is that I've read so far, but I don't know the context, whether or not, like I said, whether or not the child has lived in Nigeria before, has visited before, has had any interaction with anybody in Nigeria before. But if that is not the case, what is the difference between that situation and taking the child and dumping him in a war-torn country? Because what you're basically asking the child to do is thrive in an environment he has no idea about, he's never been to before, he doesn't know any of the people, he probably doesn't know the cultural environment. And the worst part of the thing is that apparently from the story, it looks like they abandoned the child there, which means they just dumped him there and then left. That in it of itself, that to me borders on child endangerment. So on the one side, I can see why that could be considered as a bad thing. On the other side, what the parents, from the story, what the parents are suggesting was that it's because they were trying to protect him from some kind of gang violence or some kind of thing that the child may have been involved in or allegedly involved in. Because from what I read again, it looks like the child vehemently denies any sort of gang affiliations or anything. Maybe it's just a trouble.
As you do.
Yeah. Maybe it's just a troubled. Maybe it's just one of those things where 13-year-olds go through situations, and maybe the parents are looking at it as, oh, we can't control what it is that he's going to do. We can't do all those kind of things, or we can't control his behavior. He's becoming out of control, all that kind of things. And they want to send him to a place where they feel he will be able to have some kind of structure or some kind of discipline. But that is your responsibility as a parent. It is your responsibility as a parent to instill discipline in your child. It's your responsibility as a parent to make the child act in a manner that you think is respectful and appropriate. Dumping him in Nigeria or in an environment doesn't necessarily guarantee that the child is going to be good.
Yes, yes.
On so many levels, I've given you both sides of it, but after retrospect, and this is an instant reaction. Obviously, it's an instant reaction to it. I think the child is well within his rights to demand this kind of to sue the parents and demand that, because you are basically abdicating your responsibility as a parent and dumping it on the school. Because you're sending him into a boarding school, I'm assuming. That's what they're probably doing. They're sending him to a boarding school.
Yes.
Go ahead.
No. Finish, please. Finish.
Yeah, so that to me means that you're abandoning your responsibility as a parent. Whatever it is that the child... Okay, I look at it from my perspective. There's nothing that, knock on wood, there's nothing my child does that I don't know anything about. There's nothing my child does that my wife doesn't know anything about. We're actively involved in their lives. We sit down with them, have conversations with them, go through their devices, go through their phones, if they have any, their iPads, whatever it is that they're doing, homework, whatever schoolwork you're doing, having conversations with them about school. Is there anything going on, bullying? That is your responsibility as a parent. So you can't say that, because my child is now acting up, the solution is to send the child to another country where who's going to be the one responsible for teaching? What do you know the child is going to be learning over there? What if it's actually worse? It's a total dereliction of duty as a parent, in my opinion. But then again, I'm talking from somebody that doesn't know anything about doesn't know the entirety of the story. I only know the only bits and parts that I've seen while reading in the article. So I can only speak from that perspective. I'm interested to know what you think.
So, thank you very much. Good overview, looking at it from both sides of the coin, as you should. And, cases like this, now that court is being mentioned, there will be opposing counsel. So you have one counsel having this view, you have the other counsel having another view. So just reading again back from the from the article, the boy's legal team are arguing that the parents physically and emotionally abandoned him, to the point you made earlier, due to concerns over his potential involvement in gangs in London, an accusation the teenager denies vehemently. Same thing you said. Now, what are the boys? The boys' lawyers are saying that they should return him to the UK, and that answers your question, where he's lived since birth. So you were asking, you were interested in knowing whether maybe the boy had ever lived in Nigeria, moved to the UK, and then sending him back. No, that's not the case. In this particular case, he's always lived in the UK, and they're taking him to Nigeria. Now, the boys' lawyers are saying that the parents' action were driven by the belief that there was no alternative way to address the perceived risks than by removing him from the country, right? And this boy is not yet 14. It's clearly a minor. She's also the lawyer is also saying there's clear evidence that he's being harmed emotionally, psychologically, and possibly physically. That one isn't sure. In the environment which he has been placed, right? This is, the new environment, which is Nigeria. Now, they're saying that the boys was described in court as being polite and articulate, etc., etc. He likes football. He likes cooking. Yeah. Now, the other lawyer, right, who is representing the boy's father, are saying something different, right? They are saying that social workers, now this is very important in this particular case, because I think whatever happens in this case can be landmark. It could be a landmark ruling that could even affect the US, could affect, Australia, Canada, etc., and, pretty much the West, right? Now, so what they are saying is that social workers had reported issues in managing the boy's behavior before he left the UK. Now, these are notes and these are, verifiable documents that they can see. So are we dealing with a boy who has an antisocial behavior order? Are we dealing with a boy who's, early gang behavior? Are we dealing with a boy that is shouting on his parents, swearing? Do we know much? Can they say much? in an article, maybe there are some things that they have to keep within the court records. They are saying they noted instances of physical aggression from the mother when trying to manage his behavior. They're also saying that the boy had frequently been late to class, stayed out late. This is a 13-year-old boy, and had been suspected of engaging in criminal activities. Yeah, the school had concerns about his social vulnerability. That's his own school in the UK, not the
Right.
school in Africa, right?
Right.
The school had concerns about his social vulnerability and had observed him with expensive clothes and phones.
Right.
While his phone contained pictures of knives and friends holding knives. Folks, who is the lawyer, stated that from the father's perspective, there had been a clear deterioration in the boy's behavior, leaning towards criminal activities. She argued, that's the lawyer again, that the boy's parents had real concerns about where he was and who he was with. Now, they're also saying that in her view, high quality care and education in a boarding setting was available in Africa, where the risks the boys faced in the UK were not present. She believed that the boy's potential could be wasted if he were to return to the UK. So obviously this is an ongoing case. And I just thought I add that to the mix in your submission and see if it changes things. Because I'll just share a personal experience and then you can jump in. When I was in secondary school, secondary school I went to, we had at least 2 boys in my secondary school, SS1. They came back, and this guy, we had to ask him, Yankee accent, why are you here? Why are you here? Why are you here in Nigeria? Why? So we were taunting him, and the guy told us, said, man, I was a bad kid. I think this one is bad kid. Kilo shit. What do you do? He says, throw stones at people, throwing stones by from high rise in New York. He'll be throwing stones at people walking down on the sidewalk. So they traced it to the apartment that this guy was living. And they reported now the guy detention in school, people, just messing around, and the parents talked to him. They got counselors involved. They got different things, probably the church involved. The boy didn't change. And in that particular case, I'm not saying it's the same case as this one, the parents felt the best choice they had was to take him back home, right? To take him back to Nigeria. So they tricked him, right? They tricked him, and they sent him. They said he was going home for holidays, and they left him there. And in this particular case, something similar. It wasn't as grave as this. Court wasn't involved, but the guy in question went to the American embassy. Had his ID card. His parents didn't know he had his ID card. He showed them at the gate. Said, "Look, I'm an American citizen. I don't have my passport because my parents have it, but this is my high school ID." The people let him in based on that high school ID, and he talked to a consular officer who now called his father to verify who he was, and the father literally had to come to Nigeria in a couple of weeks to speak to him and say, okay, you will come home every holiday, I'll bring clothes for you, you are here for your own good. In another couple of years, because it was SS1 that happened, 2 more years, you'll be back in the US. We needed to do this because, according to the father, he didn't want his son to go to jail. He didn't want his son to get into the system. And you know where you are. Once a child gets into the system, it's just never ending. So I want you to just use that, not literally the story I gave, but the extra bits of information that I gave in the story I read to you. Does that sway things, or are you still on that perspective that, nope, under any circumstances, it's a no-no?
So there's two things again. There's no one size fits all solution to any kind of situation. I agree. There's no panacea over any kind of situation. I agree. You have to look at every situation in isolation and weigh the pros and cons of that situation, particular to that person. Like you mentioned before, or you mentioned earlier, your experience. I had the same experience. I had this kid in my secondary school who came in from the United States. I had no notion of anything. I mean, I remember the kid was trying to do laundry, and he stood in the with the bucket of clothes and was using a stick to stir it around. Why? Because he figured that was the best way to simulate a washing machine. I'm serious. That's the best way to simulate a washing machine, because he had no concept of washing clothes. Where I see the positives of being in an environment where you think putting me in another environment might help the child, there's in my own mind, there's always the question of, at what point did those alarm bells start showing up in the child's behavioral patterns before it got to this point where it's not a case of, oh, we can't do anything about it anymore. And that is where I think the dereliction of duty as a parent occurs. You have to be very, very sort of deliberate about how you treat your children, how you raise your children. You can't now say, oh, because my child at 13 is now acting up. Well, he couldn't. There's the likelihood of him or her acting up at 13, and that would be the first time they're acting up, is very, very low. There's a chance they've been doing it prior to that. And it's either you neglected it or you didn't think it was a big deal, and now the chickens have come home to roost. This is where my own stance.
And everyone's now screaming. Yeah.
Exactly. And this is where my own stance on it is. Again, I'm not saying I'm not even going to sort of reprimand the parents and say, you're bad parents, also, because again, I don't know their situation. All I'm going to say is, blindly taking a child out of an environment that the child is comfortable in, just moving them completely to another environment. It's not even like the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, or like that kind of thing where you say you're taking him from the streets of Philadelphia into like a mansion in Bel-Air, or the Hollywood movies where you see where you are literally abandoning the child in that environment. You're not there as a support system for him at all. In the case of anything where he has an issue, it's not as if you have moved to another country or another town where if he's going through something, at least he can sort of have somebody to talk to or express those kind of feelings are. You're hundreds of miles away, thousands of miles away, at least a 6-hour flight away, You have no idea or concept of how the child is going to sort of like react when he gets in that environment, how he's going to survive in that environment. Like I just mentioned, the child has no concept of Nigeria. He doesn't know anything about Nigeria. It's literally what you're doing is literally deporting him from the UK to Nigeria and just throwing him to the wolves. Who's to say that the environment that he goes into is going to be okay? Who's to say that environment is going to teach him the best things? The best teachers for a child are the parents. You are the ones that set the mark for how the child is supposed to grow. And if that now wanes, it is a reflection on you. That is my own opinion, and I don't agree with them sending him there. We like you said, you and I have experienced it. There are certain things that even parenting nowadays or then, and you're looking at it and you're like, that was borderline child abuse, man.
So let's segue. Let's segue into that. Into that. So, I'm two-sided. I'm two-sided on this. To be honest,
in life, there's always two sides. Go ahead.
I get your point, but I think for some extreme cases, when all else has failed, let's not. Yeah, I agree with you as well that even before it gets to that stage, that child has been showing some signs, and it's a lack of parental responsibility. I agree. Whether they spoil the child, whether they let the child be. Some of the things that concerned me about what I read was expensive phones, expensive things. The child, obviously 13, is not as if he's a rap star now, or he has a record label. Even when you have a record label, you're still under somebody, an adult that is managing you. So you shouldn't even have that kind of money. So the boy is already engaging in criminality under the parents' watch. So to the point you were making about checking the phone, checking what they do, something has gone wrong where they fumbled the ball, fumbled the bag, they missed the boat. Something happened where the parents were not paying attention when they should have paid attention. Whether it's to do with what kinds of friends are you rolling with, whether it's to do with bring your bag, let me check what's in your bag, let me even check what's in your phone. What are you looking at in your phone? That they even now, that social workers and people are now finding pictures of knives and boys holding knives. So maybe what I'm thinking is, at that point, the parents now thought there's nothing else we can do. We've tried everything, right? Now we've missed the mark before the child got to 13. Now the child has gotten to 13, and maybe at that point they're even almost scared of him. Not scared of him, but you know what I mean. when they're always like, okay, if this boy continues like this, we don't want him to pop up in the news. And I mean, it's the UK, London, probably London, where we're seeing a lot of 13, 14-year-old boys. I don't know if you've seen those videos.
Right.
Are they,
I have.
where you'll be your phone and one guy just be with the scooter.
Yep.
Before you know it,
Yep.
your phone is gone and you're like, what's going on?
What is going on?
They're
I
young
agree.
boys. They're young boys, black, white, Asian, whatever. They're young boys. They're usually under 20. You don't see like a 40-year-old man or 27-year-old man doing that. It's usually young guys on scooters going. So they have different gangs doing different things in the UK at the moment. So I'm thinking, yes, for extreme cases, for me, from extreme cases, under guided supervision, under where they can trust the people that are going to take care of the child when they are not there, boarding school, because this is boarding school, not day school. So a good boarding school where there's access to the headmaster or the principal to check the boy, how is he doing, regular calls, maybe half term if they can afford it. During half term, they can go to Nigeria if it's not too expensive. If not, maybe whoever they've delegated that responsibility to in Nigeria they can stay in that person's house during half term, and then every semester if there's enough money, they can come back to the UK. But for extreme cases, it's not. I would say it's not the go-to for regular cases, but where there's criminality showing, antisocial behavior, and possibly losing that child to the system, I think in those cases, I would say probably an exception. But by then, the child is already gone. Otilo, as they say in Nigerian parlance, Otilo. By then, the child is gone. But for most cases, I would say, trying to rein the child back, and, speaking to him, trying to understand what's going on, cutting the friends, and trying to see what else they can do in the UK to keep that child. But in extreme cases, I think, one should consider it for extreme cases. Right, and this is all we know from the case. But segueing back to the point you made earlier about parenting styles now compared to when we grew up.
Right.
What's your take?
Oh, it was borderline.
A lot has changed.
No, bro. It was borderline child abuse. That's what it was. It was borderline. I have this argument with my wife every day, or not every day, but very, very frequently, because she's adamant that their parenting style will not be our parenting style. No, then if you messed about, you were on my side to fuck up, and you got reminded.
You got reminded.
All Momsi needed to do then was, when she does this, when we get home, you are dead. Whatever party you are, you are not even interested in the party. You just
that click,
and that flick of the finger, or she gives you an eye and she says, or wait till your father comes to, you are dead.
Or somebody gives you money. Remember those days? Somebody gives you money at a party. And you collect that money without asking your parents if you should collect it.
That's even money. That's even money. You go to an auntie's house. Wait now. You go to an auntie's house or a friend's house and they say, do you want to eat? And you say yes. Ojeunile Elumi. Hey, you are dead.
These are the issues.
They'll tell you, eat now. Eat now. Your mother to be say, hey, Joe now. You just say, no, I don't. Is pity. No, but that, so it was borderline. So I meant to say, my discussion with her was, there was some, like I said before earlier, I said that there's no panacea. It's particular to each person. There's some parts of me that believe that experience led me to the type of person I am today. I am the kind of person now, it's a yes sir, yes ma'am kind of person. I respect, even if you're a year older than me, the amount of level of respect that I give you is there. You don't have that in this day society. Part of it is the upbringing that we had. It was a very, very regimented thing. You were respectful to all your elders. You behaved yourself at all times, because the neighbors, remember, even the neighbors in the neighborhood could treat you fuck up.
Yeah, because communities raise children. It wasn't
exactly.
Children.
Yeah, in this environment though, so that's what I'm saying. There's some positive sides of the way they raised us, and there were also some negative sides of the way they raised us. what I see in this generation is we are throwing away the baby with the bathwater. The positive sides we don't want to acknowledge. We assume that everything that not everything, but majority of the things they did then were negative. Oh, they beat you. Oh, they didn't tell you, they didn't allow you to talk back to anybody. You were not, even your teachers, you're not allowed to talk back to your teachers. You're not allowed to do this one. Everything was sort of regimented. And that, because that it is, no, we're not going to do that anymore. We're going to go. So the pendulum has swung 180 degrees to the other side. And I'm like, no. There has to be some middle ground between this thing, which is where I'm going back to that thing that we're talking about with the parents again. There's some parents within the UK. I know the UK environment is difficult. I know the British environment is difficult. There's some
very difficult.
The influences, you can't really talk to your children. You can't even discipline your children without fear of them calling the cops on you. It happens in America too. You can't talk to your child. I understand that. But if my opinion is, if you take the time to put the right principles in them at a younger age, instill the fear of the parent at a younger age. Now, you don't have to do that through disciplining. You don't have to do that through beating. Once in a while, when the child is about 3 or 4 and they want to test how far they can go, you treat that fuck up right there and then. There's a less likelihood of them being rebellious at 13. You treat it with love.
I agree.
You know, there's a song, there's a saying, Shebenu Taja Mafin Baramare, so you temper love with
we see that with lions, and we see that with
you temper love with discipline. You talk to them, but then you let them know that, hey, we're not friends, but you are friendly with them. You let them know that, hey, you can't do this. You have to be disciplined here, but then you still give them some kind of
boundaries as well.
Yeah, exactly. I am not saying that is a panacea. I'm not saying that is going to work out all the time, but I'm saying the likelihood is that you're going to have you will have the sort of outcomes that you are looking for, and you have to be very, very deliberate about it. To go back to that conversation about that child again, and I'll say it till the cows come home. Those behaviors, even when the child is sticking knife or having expensive watches, those traits would have been there you would have seen those things. Who are the people that he's interacting with? How often, again, it's easy for me to say because I don't know what their situation is, but how often are you home with the child? How often are you there to actually teach the child, to discipline the child, to be involved in the child's life? If you are there, you'll see those warning signs. I miss some warning signs. My wife catches most of them. She misses some warning signs. I catch most of them.
Some. Yeah.
So that, and even if you're in a single family home, it's still possible to be done. Catch the warning signs early. Be involved in their child. I'm preaching I know I'm preaching here a little bit, but that is what I think.
No.
That is what I think will help. Sort of make these kind of things less and less and less. And I don't subscribe to the theory that removing your child from this environment and taking them to another environment where you are counting on that situation to train your child is where I'm like, that's the disconnect for me. Why should you be counting on the school? Is it the headmaster's responsibility? Is it the principal's responsibility? Is it the teacher's responbility? Is it the classmate's responsibility? Or your responsibility as a parent? That's where they lose me. Why should you say you're abdicating? In my opinion, I could be wrong, but in my opinion, what you're doing is abdicating your responsibility as a parent and pushing it on to somebody else. I say, I can't do this anymore. I can't do this. It has to be somebody else's responsibility. That's where I don't agree.
No. Fair points. Fair points you've made. We'll still watch this case. I only found out about it today, and it blew up every single place. TikTok. It's been on different platforms, and I'm happy that you and I have been able to hear about it, guys. My public service announcement I usually make. Subscribe.
Yes, definitely, please.
I want to get to 1,000 subscribers, so please subscribe, like, and share. How can the viewers get to connect with you if they wish to? Do you have any social media handles, Ade?
Oh yeah, so me, I do a little bit of podcasting on my own. It's a sports podcast, classic sports banter. We talk about historical sporting events, personalities, and people. We just have basically like this. Just have a conversation about and do a reminisce. So where were you when? Like for instance, one of our episodes is where were you when Nigeria won the first World Cup? Qualified for the World Cup the first time. How did you feel? I remember why I felt, and we just talk about things like that. Do like hypothetical matchups. Who would win between, Hagler and Marvelous Marvin Hagler and maybe, Roy Jones Jr., that kind of thing. Who wins? So it's on all social media, all podcasting platforms. You can find us on Spotify, on Google Podcast, Apple Podcast.
Did you call it Classic Sports Banter? I'll put it in the description.
Yeah, it's Classic Sports Banter
down below.
Yeah.
So viewers, please follow Ade on those platforms. It has a lot of great things to say. Thank you so much for joining me on this topic.
My pleasure, sir.
So just to conclude, this is a great case from a legal perspective for both from the parent side and from the child side. And it was good to have Ade on board to give me his views on the topic. So some years back, this happened in the UK, where the Sudanese or Somali community in London, they had several run-ins as well, and there was a concerted effort by the women in that community to send their sons back home a few years ago, despite the media perception that Sudan and Somalia are war-torn countries in our media. This became a national issue a few years ago. This is prior to COVID. We live in a more legal world today in which parents are effectively custodians and the state owners of children, in my view. This sort of legal matters will keep arising until a legal determination or precedent is set. So let's see what happens with this particular case and what it bodes for other cases like this, not just in the UK, but across the Western world. Now, the question is, when such a precedent is set, would parents stop feeling like they're more than registered keepers of children they biologically give birth to? That's one question to take away. But I'm interested to hear your comments on this particular case. Do you side the boy? Do you side the parents? Who is wrong? Who is right? It doesn't matter. Just come to my channel and give your thoughts. Subscribe, like, share, and comment, and I'll see you in the next one.